I'm on the Weather Underground website and the Category 6 blog. This is the most recent blog at the moment by Dr. Jeff Masters. This is from 11:11 AM Eastern Daylight Time, September 8, 2018. And the current time, Eastern Daylight Time in the USA, is 6:29 PM, Saturday, September 8. And I'm in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which is here. And Hurricane Florence is heading in this direction. So let's have a look at the blog. In the cone, Florence takes aim at the southeast US. And this is a recent image of Tropical Storm Florence. As you can see, it's becoming more organized. This image is from 10:20 AM Eastern Daylight Time, September 8, 2018. The outer edge of the 5-day uncertainty cone for Tropical Storm Florence is now over North Carolina and South Carolina, as the dangerous storm heads towards the southeast US coast. Though just a tropical storm with 65-mile-per-hour winds as of 11 AM Saturday, Florence is beginning to reorganize over warm ocean waters and is expected to re-intensify into a dangerous Category 4 hurricane by Tuesday. That is Tuesday, September 11. Florence is likely to be very close to the southeast US coast by Thursday. The southeast US east coast by Thursday, bringing dangerous impacts. And there you can see 8 AM Tuesday, September 11, 8 AM Thursday, September 13. That's where Florence is expected to be. And a more detailed description here. Florence was about 835 miles southeast of Bermuda late Saturday morning, moving just south of due west at 7 miles per hour. Sea surface temperatures were a warm 28.5 degrees Celsius, 83 Fahrenheit, but Florence was embedded in an atmosphere with somewhat dry air, a mid-level relative humidity of 50%. The high wind shear of 20 to 25 knots that had been driving this dry air into the core of the storm had abated significantly on Saturday morning and was a moderate 10 to 15 knots. Satellite images on Saturday morning showed that the storm was significantly more organized, having assumed a more symmetrical shape with impressive spiral banding. A Hurricane Hunter aircraft flying out of Bermuda on Saturday morning is investigating Florence, and the NOAA jet will fly a drop sonde mission on Saturday night. So it's early Saturday night now. It's 6:32 PM Eastern Daylight Time, September 8 in Myrtle Beach. So yeah, definitely a more organized looking storm, and this is going to ramp up pretty quickly now. The intensity forecast for Florence. Florence's environment has grown much more conducive for intensification. Wind shear dropped to a moderate 10 to 15 knots Saturday morning, and the ship's model predicts shear will drop even further tonight, staying a low 5 to 10 knots through Wednesday. And low wind shear is what they like. Hurricanes, they like low wind shear. Sea surface temperatures will gradually increase to 29 degrees Celsius, 84 degrees Fahrenheit during this period, and ocean heat content will more than double, from 20 to nearly 50 kilojoules per square centimeter. That's the fuel for a hurricane. Our top intensity models unanimously predict strengthening of Florence into a Category 3 or 4 hurricane by Tuesday, September 11, and the storm is also expected to increase in size. Florence will still be embedded in a relatively dry atmosphere, So it is possible the storm could suffer from dry air intrusions that would interfere with the intensification process though, as has been happening. That's what weakened Florence from a Category 4 down to a tropical storm. But as it organises, it may be able to fend off the dry air. The Hurricane Center is explicitly forecasting rapid intensification with Florence, perhaps starting as soon as later today. And that's the classic spiral. It's the warning sign of intensification underway. And there's another system, a disturbed area of low pressure called 94L, and it is between Florence and the coast that she's heading towards. This could play a part in helping to strengthen Florence as well. It could also play a part in weakening Florence if this were to strengthen enough, but that's not likely. Big waves are coming. And as it mentions here too, there are some warm eddies with ocean heat values near 75 kilojoules per square centimetre. Ocean heat content levels this high are often associated with rapid intensification of hurricanes, and that will be as it gets closer to the coast. These warm eddies come up from the Gulf of Mexico. They're in the Gulf Stream. Big waves are coming, that's for certain. Florence's power and expanding size are generating swells that were affecting Bermuda on Saturday, with waves of 5 to 8 feet in the outside waters. There are no watches for Bermuda at this time, and the island is well north of Florence's cone of uncertainty, so Florence is heading south of Bermuda Island. Luckily for Bermuda, large swells will begin reaching the US east coast by Sunday, and also propagate to north and northeastward, facing coasts of the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, the Turks and Caicos, and the Bahamas into this weekend. These swells will produce life-threatening surf and rip current conditions at beaches. Invest 94L, that's our little area of disturbed weather in between Florence and the east coast of the USA. Will it impact Florence? An elongated area of low pressure developed in the waters a few hundred miles west of Bermuda on Friday and was designated 94L by National Hurricane Center. If 94L shows some significant organization this weekend, upper level outflow from the system could create wind shear that would weaken Florence, and 94L could pull Florence more to the north. However, none of the models are predicting this will happen. And Saturday morning, satellite imagery showed 94L was poorly organized, with a fairly small area of heavy thunderstorms, as seen on Bermuda radar. In their 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time Saturday tropical weather outlook, National Hurricane Center gave 94L 2-day and 5-day odds of development of only 10%. Something to watch with 94L though. I saw a presentation a few years ago that showed that Hurricane Katrina of 2005 increased markedly in size after it absorbed a small area of disturbed weather over the southeast Gulf of Mexico and acquired more moisture and spin. If Florence manages to absorb 94L, the increased spin the combined system will have may act to expand Florence's size considerably, leading to a larger storm surge and an increased area of wind and rainfall impacts. Satellite images on Saturday morning showed some of 94L's moisture heading toward the northwest flank of Florence, but it is unclear at this point if Florence will pass close enough to 94L to get a significant boost in moisture and spin. So it's unclear from computer models at the moment if that will happen or not. I've got a feeling it will though. Just a feeling it will happen. And there we have the two models, the European and the, I think that's the European, and the ensemble. So the ensemble is like the average of all the different model runs. Well, they're both pretty much in the same ballpark. The track forecast for Florence. Significant danger for the US East Coast. The forecast of Florence and impact to the US East Coast mid to late next week remains very uncertain, but the danger to the coast has increased with each set of model runs over the past 3 days. Florence is being steered by the clockwise flow around the Bermuda High, the semi-permanent high-pressure system centered over the North Atlantic Ocean. The edge of the Bermuda High will lie across the US East Coast during the middle of the week, and when Florence rounds the southwestern flank of the Bermuda High, the hurricane will turn to the northwest and then north. Thus, the exact position and orientation of the southwestern flank of the Bermuda High, in combination with the strength of the trough of low pressure that will be just to its west, will be the keys to the timing and location of Florence's turn to the north. Since this turn is still 5 days away, there is substantial model disagreement on this, as the average error in a 5-day official National Hurricane Center forecast in recent years has been just over 200 miles. A direct hit from Florence could happen anywhere along the swathe of coast from northern Florida to Massachusetts, with North Carolina and South Carolina being at greatest risk. The main scenarios, as I see them, with some rough odds as to their likelihood, are numbered 1 to 4. Before I read that, I'll just mention that this northward turn they're talking about is now occurring over land. So too late to save the East Coast from an impact. So that does not look good. 1. The most likely scenario, Florence will continue heading west-northwest to northwest until landfall in North Carolina or South Carolina on Thursday. That's a 40% chance. So it's not the most likely scenario overall, but it's the one that I actually think is going to happen. I'm thinking South Carolina is where the landfall is going to be. Recent operational runs of the European model have championed this scenario, along with some recent operational runs of the GFS model. 2. The Bermuda High intensifies as Florence approaches the coast, resulting in a more westerly or even west-southwesterly motion with a landfall in Georgia or northern Florida on Thursday. So that's only a 10% chance. Recent runs of the UK model have suggested this outcome. 3. Florence will turn to the north, just off the coast of North Carolina, making landfall in the mid-Atlantic or New England between Virginia and Massachusetts on Saturday. 20% chance. Several recent operational runs of the GFS model, that's the American model, and many members of the GFS and European model ensemble forecasts have made this forecast. So that's a possibility too. 4. Florence will turn to the north just off the coast of North Carolina, then head northeast out to sea without making any landfall. Now that's a 30% chance. Still. So it still could happen that it could miss. Members of the GFS and European model ensemble forecasts have made this forecast. A landfall in Canada isn't completely out of the question, even if Florence misses the United States. So I just have a feeling it's number 1 though. I think it's going to head for South Carolina. That's my feeling. It's only a feeling though, not science. All of these scenarios also carry the risk that Florence will stall just inland or just off the coast, and potentially perform a clockwise loop, delivering a multi-day punishment of the coast. There have been a number of model runs over the past day suggesting that steering currents may collapse on Saturday, stranding Florence. Such an outcome would raise the risk of torrential rains across part of the mid-Atlantic, where the remnants of Gordon will be dumping significant rain this weekend atop already saturated ground. NOAA has issued a high risk of excessive rainfall for Saturday, as Gordon remnants move across southern Illinois and Indiana. If you live in a hurricane-prone location, now is a good time to make sure you have a preparedness plan in place. Yes. Our next update will be on the other tropical cyclones in the Atlantic and Pacific we are concerned about. This is the craziest peak week of hurricane season I've ever experienced. And Bob Henson contributed to this post, which was written by Dr. Jeff Masters, the founder of Weather Underground, the Category 6 blogger, and Jeff Masters flew in the Hurricane Hunter aircraft between 1986 and 1990, and writes these very detailed blogs. And when it comes to hurricanes, yeah, he knows what he's talking about. There she is, Florence. Florence at 10:20 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Saturday, September 8, 2018. 10:20 a.m. Reminds me, I don't know if you've heard of this. There's something in Wyoming called the Steamboat Geyser. And the steamboat, I just read today that, well, if we go to news on the steamboat, you'll see that it erupted for the 17th time in 2018. And that was on September 7. Thermal image just reminds you it is hot, what comes out of the geyser. And the time of that eruption, I just read this last night, was 10:20 a.m. The same time that the image was taken. I just realized 10:20 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Of course, this was 10:20 a.m. Wyoming time, which is central, Mountain Daylight Time, I think they call it in Wyoming. And the picture here is the eruption of Steamboat from the 22nd of August. So yeah, that just rang a bell. The time, 10:20. 10:20 eruption of Steamboat, and a 10:20 image of Tropical Storm Florence on September 8, 2018, the day after the Steamboat erupted. Interesting. So it's now 6:46 p.m. in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Saturday, 8th of September 2018. So they'll be flying those missions tonight off the Hurricane Hunter aircraft, and they'll be looking to get as much information on this as they can, because this is serious. This is a serious threat to the east coast of the US. And there's going to be a lot of news about this over the coming week. This looks a bit menacing. You always tend to forget what a major hurricane really involves. Major hurricanes are not things you want to get hit by. They're ferocious. So this is showing what's going to be happening on September 13 as it nears land on September 13, 2018. Hurricane Florence. The National Hurricane Center is projecting that Hurricane Florence will be a Category 4 storm, so 145 mile per hour winds sustained 5 days from now. Well, that's the strongest 5-day intensity forecast for an Atlantic hurricane they've issued in the last 2 decades. Keep in mind, though, intensity forecasts are much more uncertain than track forecasts. The big picture, a highly unusual and complex chessboard of weather systems across the North Atlantic are conspiring to push now Tropical Storm Florence to the west-northwest, rather than out to sea as every other storm in its current position has done. Particularly crucial in the storm track forecast is a potentially record-breaking area of high pressure that is forecast to build to the storm's northeast next week. This will act as an atmospheric stop sign, pinning what could then be a powerful hurricane close to or over the east coast. One reason why forecasters are anticipating that Florence will rapidly intensify is the ocean temperatures. Sea surface temperatures are at least 3 degrees warmer than average off the east coast, giving the storm plenty of fuel. This should allow the storm to intensify. The details, depending on the storm's intensity and exact path, both of which are considerably uncertain, the storm could pose a devastating threat to areas that have not seen a major hurricane make landfall in decades. So the timing is likely to be Thursday to Saturday next week. That's Thursday the 13th through to Saturday the 16th, 15th. Assuming it makes landfall, Florence could pose a devastating threat to areas that have not seen a major hurricane strike in decades. Charleston, South Carolina, for example, last saw a Category 4 storm make a direct hit in 1989 when Hurricane Hugo struck. 1989, Hurricane Hugo. Jeff Masters, who wrote this blog I just read, he flew one of the Hurricane Hunter aircraft right through Hurricane Hugo. Almost lost his life in the process because the plane, it all went very wrong. Hugo, 1989, that's the year that Jacob Wetterling, the boy from Minnesota who I talk about sometimes, Wetterling means weather child. It's a German surname. Well, October 1989, that's when Jake's life came to an end. Had nothing to do with Hurricane Hugo, but one of the last things Jake would have seen in the news would have been Hurricane Hugo. Since Hugo, the area has expanded in population, and sea level rise from climate change and land subsidence has led to increasingly common sunny day flooding, making any storm surge threat from a hurricane particularly serious. Yes, but there is lots of time for the forecast to change. There are still scenarios in play where Florence comes close to the east coast but does not make landfall. For now, meteorologists and government officials are urging East Coast residents to pay close attention to official forecasts and take actions to prepare for a possible storm. This includes buying particular supplies and familiarizing yourself with evacuation routes should that become necessary next week, which I think it's going to. This is serious. This is a serious situation. It hasn't developed yet, but it's going to. All the conditions are in its favour, apart from a bit of dry air. But Florence previously has shaken off dry air, even with high wind shear. Increased storm surge damage from Florence due to the moon's phase. So there's a lot to read here. There's a lot of stories, news stories that I could delve into, but I'm going to stop there because I've read a full blog and a full news story. That's enough to give you a good picture of what's going on. And yeah, anyone living in that part of the world, I would be very worried personally if I lived on the coast, even inland, because if this system moves inland and stalls, it's going to be a big problem. A lot of areas have already seen a lot of flooding recently. The grounds are saturated, so seriously, this is not good at all. This is serious. This is a serious situation, and this is probably not going to end well at all for a lot of people. So I would take the warning very seriously. I would be probably thinking seriously about evacuating from any area where flooding is what kills. That's the thing. When it comes to hurricanes, the killer is the water. When there's a lot of deaths, it's the water. It's the storm surge or it's the flooding. It's not the wind. The wind can kill, but it doesn't kill many people compared to the water. And that's what you've got to get away from. The water, the storm surge, and the flooding. Do that and your life will probably be spared, even if your house isn't. Climate change, it's not fun. This was meant to be a quiet year. Of course, you can still get a storm, an intense storm during a quiet year, but this isn't the only one. There's another one coming as well. I think Isaac will be the name given to the other storm that could go through the Caribbean. And then there's a huge typhoon forming in the West Pacific that could hit Taiwan or China. So there's another one heading towards Hawaii. It should arrive as a tropical storm, but Hawaii has already had 2 landfalls this year. And Guam, the one in the West Pacific, is going to hit Guam as a very powerful typhoon. So the island of Guam is likely to suffer a lot of damage. So there's a lot happening. A lot happening in a lot of places, and Florence is a big one. Florence is going to be a large, powerful hurricane. So people in the US need to take it very seriously, I'd say. Very seriously indeed. And it's 6:55 p.m. now on Saturday, September 8. So we're talking September 13 to September 15, around there, when Florence is most likely to be making landfall. So in a few days from now.